8 months pregnant and mocked by my husband's sister. 1 week later, she lost everything. She poured wine into my hand, then screamed like I attacked her. Everyone turned. My husband looked away. But that night, something broke inside me. They thought I'd stay quiet forever. They had no idea what I had planned. I still remember the sting, not just from the wine, but from every eye in that room judging me, like I was some villain in a story I never wrote. I was 8 months pregnant. I'd spent all day trying to look presentable, to feel human again. Then Chloe handed me a glass, whispered something sugary, and with one move, the wine was everywhere, on her, on me, on the marble floor. She gasped, cried out like I'd ruined her life. People stared. Some whispered, others laughed. Greg, my husband, just stood there. Not a word, not a step forward, just silence. That moment, it burned itself into me. Something twisted, something hardened. And I knew I wouldn't let this be my ending. They thought they could humiliate me into silence. But they didn't know who I was. Not yet. Greg used to be the kind of man who made you feel like the sun rose just to see you smile. When we first met, he was the quiet type, observant, thoughtful, always watching more than he spoke. I liked that. I liked him. He made me feel seen, heard, safe. Back then, his family was just a picture on his phone. He rarely talked about them. Said they were complicated. I didn't ask questions. I figured we'd cross that bridge when we got there. When we moved in together, he'd cook on Sundays, rub my feet after long shifts, leave little sticky notes on the fridge. I thought, maybe this was what stability felt like. Then we got married. That was when the curtain lifted and his family stepped in, uninvited and overwhelming. His mother, Eleanor, was polite in public but cold in private. She'd smile through her teeth and say things like, "You clean up nicely for someone raised without manners." Or, "Greg's always had a soft heart for strays." At first, I laughed it off. Told myself I was being sensitive. But it got worse when Chloe, Greg's younger sister, came back from grad school. She moved in temporarily after a breakup, said she needed a reset. What she really wanted was control. She'd critique everything. The way I folded towels, the brand of milk I bought, even the name I suggested for the baby. "That sounds like someone who sells crystals at a farmer's market," she scoffed. Greg never defended me. Never once said, "Stop." He'd just smile awkwardly or change the subject. When I finally pulled him aside one night and asked if he noticed how I was being treated, he sighed and said, "They're just being themselves, babe. Don't take it personally." But I did. I took every word personally. Because this was my life, and the people in it were treating me like a guest in my own home. I stopped speaking up. I stopped inviting people over. Even my own sister said I sounded like someone else on the phone. Someone smaller. When I found out I was pregnant, I thought things would change. I hoped, foolishly, that the news would soften Eleanor. That Chloe would stop seeing me as a threat. That Greg would finally become the kind of husband who shielded his family, not just from the world, but from the people who claimed to love him. Instead, it got worse. Chloe started calling the baby the Holloway heir, like I was just an incubator for the family name. She'd press on my belly without asking, say things like, "Let's hope it gets Greg's brain, not yours." Once, at a dinner, she toasted to finally getting some real blood back into the bloodline. I wanted to leave. I almost did. Bags half packed, keys in my hand. But Greg begged me to stay. Said he was under pressure at work, that his parents were watching him, that it wasn't the right time to stir the pot. And I loved him. God help me, I still loved him. So I stayed. We decorated the nursery. Picked out colors. I read articles about birth plans and breathing techniques while Chloe watched me from the hallway like I was a pet she couldn't quite figure out. At night, I'd lie in bed next to Greg and wonder what version of me he saw when he closed his eyes. Did he remember the woman who danced barefoot in our old kitchen? Who made soup from scratch and sang off-key in the car? Or had I become invisible even to him? By my 8th month, I barely recognized myself. I wore oversized sweaters. My feet ached. I cried over commercials. But more than that, I was lonely. I was surrounded by people, yet lonelier than I'd ever been in my life. So when Greg invited me to the gala, his family's big 40th anniversary celebration, I said yes. Not because I wanted to go, but because some small, desperate part of me still believed that maybe, just maybe, I could still belong. That maybe they'd finally see me as more than an outsider. That maybe, for one night, I could feel like I was part of something again. I had no idea I was walking straight into a setup. The gala wasn't just some corporate event. It was a celebration of legacy. 40 years since Greg's father founded Holloway and Company, and the entire family treated it like the royal wedding. There were engraved invitations, red carpet photos, custom cocktails named after family members. But not one thing mentioned me. Not even a simple line like spouse of the CEO. I wasn't part of the brand. Greg told me not to take it personally. Just show up, smile, let's get through the night, he said. He kissed my forehead like that would erase everything. I nodded, but inside, I was crumbling. The night of the gala, I wore a long navy gown. Modest, elegant. I curled my hair the way Greg used to like. I even wore the diamond earrings he gave me on our second anniversary. One last try. One last offering. When we stepped into the venue, the Holloways were everywhere. Chloe stood front and center in fire red satin, laughing with board members like she owned the place. She turned the second she saw us. "Oh, Camille," she said, air kissing both my cheeks like we were old friends. "You look brave." I blinked. Brave? She smiled. To wear silk this late into pregnancy. You never know when something might give way. Then she winked and walked off. Greg heard it. He heard every word. And said nothing. For the next hour, I became invisible. Everyone greeted Greg. They shook his hand, toasted his success. When they glanced at me, it was with polite pity. Like I was the PR problem nobody knew how to address. At one point, I excused myself to sit by the windows. My back ached. My feet were swollen. But more than that, my heart was heavy. I watched Greg laugh with investors, his arm casually draped behind Chloe's chair. She leaned in close, whispered something in his ear. He grinned. That was the moment I realized something had shifted. I wasn't just being tolerated. I was being replaced. Chloe wasn't just playing hostess. She was staking her claim. And Greg, he wasn't just ignoring it. He was letting her. Later, as the music swelled and the lights dimmed for speeches, Chloe suddenly appeared beside me. "Come on," she said sweetly. "Let's toast. One glass won't hurt." She handed me a glass of red wine. I shook my head. "I'm not drinking tonight." "Oh, but it's Napa. A gift from the partners. Special reserve. You wouldn't want to offend anyone, would you?" She raised the glass again. I gently declined. That's when her smile dropped for a split second. Then, like a switch, she turned to the crowd. "Camille," she called out loudly. "She doesn't want to toast with me. And this is her big night too." Several heads turned. Greg looked up from across the room. I panicked, reached out instinctively to take the glass. And she let it slip. Right onto herself. Wine soaked her dress in one perfect splash. She gasped. Loud. Then screamed, this was custom. From Milan. She dropped the glass. It shattered. People stared. Phones came out. Chloe sobbed dramatically, mascara running, blaming me for ruining her night. And Greg? He didn't defend me. He didn't say a single word. He just stood there. And I stood there too, pregnant, humiliated, and utterly alone. I don't remember how I got to the restroom. All I know is that one moment I was standing there, wine dripping from my hand, eyes burning under the chandeliers, and the next, I was locked inside a stall, my back against the cold tiled wall, trying not to fall apart. Not because of the wine. Not even because of Chloe. But because of Greg. Because the man who promised to protect me had watched it all happen, and chose silence. I sat on the edge of the marble counter, both hands cradling my belly. The baby shifted inside me, gentle, rhythmic. Like he was trying to calm me. I whispered, I'm sorry. Not to anyone else. Just to him. For putting us here. For trusting the wrong people. For believing family meant safety. When I finally stepped back into the ballroom, nothing had changed. Laughter. Music. Champagne flutes clinking like none of it had happened. But I had changed. My gaze swept across the room. They weren't my people. This wasn't my home. And Greg, still seated at the head table, wasn't my protector. He was part of the stage. I walked past them all without a word. Didn't look back. Didn't wait for Greg to follow. I hailed a cab, sat with both arms around my belly, and went home. That night, I slept on the living room couch. I didn't cry. I didn't speak. I just stared at the ceiling, heart pounding in a rhythm that didn't feel like mine anymore. Around 3 a.m., my phone buzzed. A notification. Someone had tagged me in a video. I opened it, and froze. It was me, 8 months pregnant, dancing barefoot in the living room. I'd filmed it for Greg, on a night he said work was killing him. I wanted to make him laugh. Now it was public. Thousands of views. Hundreds of laughing emojis. Captioned. Pregnant ballerina puts on a show. And just like that, my humiliation became company entertainment. And I knew exactly who leaked it. I didn't scream. I didn't throw my phone. I just stared at the screen, at myself, smiling in my living room, belly round, twirling softly to a jazz track Greg once said he loved. He filmed it. I never posted it. No one else had access. So how did the entire world end up laughing at me? The comment section was a storm. She looks like a hippo in heels. Who told her that was sexy? Cringe. I'd leave too. I felt the tears start. Not hot. Just slow. Cold. Like my body was grieving a version of me I'd spent years trying to build. The one who still believed in softness. In effort. In us. I stayed in that spot for hours. Didn't move. Didn't sleep. The baby kicked once. Then again. A quiet reminder that I wasn't alone. When the sun finally rose, I packed a single bag. Toiletries. 2 changes of clothes. Prenatal vitamins. Then I grabbed the spare keys to my old apartment. I hadn't been there in years. But I never gave up the lease. Something told me I'd need a backup life someday. The ride there was silent. Seattle looked gray, drizzly. Appropriate, I thought. The place was musty. Cold. But it was mine. No staged photos on the walls. No curated furniture. Just a couch, a kettle, and peace. I turned off my phone. No texts. No notifications. Let Greg wonder. Let Chloe fume. Let them choke on the silence they left me with for so long. The next morning, I bought a prepaid SIM and logged into a hidden social media account I hadn't touched in years. I searched my name. Found the video reposted across multiple pages. Some people thought it was hilarious. Others felt bad, but most just watched and shared. Like I was nothing more than a meme. Then I got a message. Private. From a woman named Allison. The subject line, I was you. For years ago. She was Greg's ex-fiancée. They broke up just before I met him. She told me how Eleanor never accepted her. How Chloe used to record her private moments and mock her in group chats. She said Greg watched it happen and did nothing. Run, she wrote. They don't change. They just choose new targets. I stared at the message for a long time. Then forwarded it to my personal email. Proof. In case I ever doubted myself again. A few days later, another video leaked. This time from inside Greg's office. He and Chloe were in the break room, playing my living room dance clip on a big screen. Laughing. Rewinding. Greg smirked and said, she really thought this would make me love her again? Chloe laughed so hard she snorted. The camera angle shifted just enough for me to see the rest of the room. The employees. Board members. Partners. All laughing. I watched the entire thing without blinking, then downloaded the clip. That afternoon, I scheduled a consultation with a lawyer. Not a divorce lawyer. Not yet. A media attorney. We discussed image rights, defamation, emotional harm, and something called intentional infliction of distress. He said I had a case. A strong one. Especially if Chloe worked in PR, as publicly listed. We outlined a plan. But I didn't rush. I wanted it slow. Precise. Quiet. Let them keep thinking I was broken. Let them assume I was gone for good. In truth, I was rebuilding. Not for revenge. But for survival. For dignity. For the baby still growing inside me, whose mother refused to be anyone's punchline. And as I left the law office, I passed a florist. Something made me stop. I bought a small bouquet of white tulips. Went back to the apartment. Placed them by the window. And whispered. We don't belong to them anymore. That was the beginning of the end. They just didn't know it yet. 3 days after filing the paperwork, I got a text from Greg. We need to talk. Chloe's been crying for days. You've made your point. My point? He thought this was a tantrum. Not the aftermath of humiliation, betrayal, and public cruelty. I didn't reply. But that night, I went back to the house, our house, for one reason only. To end it. The moment I walked through the door, I knew she'd been there. Chloe's perfume lingered. A lipstick-stained wine glass sat on the coffee table. And beside it, an empty teacup. My mother-in-law's favorite floral china. She'd been there too. Not just watching, staying, supporting, smiling, like the quiet applause of someone who approved of the show. Greg looked up from the kitchen. You're back, he said, surprised. No, I replied. I'm just here to collect the last piece of me you thought you could break. He stepped forward, trying to stay calm. You've been overreacting. That video was just something fun. You dance. People laughed. It's not that deep. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because I was done. You think I care about a few laughs? You turned me into a joke. And Chloe, she poured wine on herself to set me up in front of your entire family. You didn't just stand there. You let it happen. And your mother, she helped set the stage. He opened his mouth, but I cut him off. I reached into my bag and pulled out a flash drive. Play it, I said. It was the recording. Chloe, laughing in the break room, saying she gave things a little push. One pill. That's all it took. Greg froze. Silent. Then, finally, he whispered, She drugged you? I looked him in the eye. She nearly killed your child. And your family smiled through it. He sank onto the couch, hands trembling. I turned to the door. I'm not pressing charges yet, but you won't see me again. Because sometimes, walking away is the loudest thing you'll ever do. I left Seattle the next morning. No note. No forwarding address. Just a quiet departure on the first southbound train. I didn't cry. I didn't look back. I just pressed my hand to my belly and whispered, We're starting over. A coastal town became our new beginning. Small, quiet, faceless. I found a room above a bakery owned by a retired couple who never asked questions. I told them my name was Ella. No last name. Just Ella. Each morning, I walked along the shoreline. Sea breeze in my hair. Salt on my lips. And silence. Blessed, healing silence. I stopped checking the news. Stopped wondering what Greg was doing. If Chloe was still pretending to cry, they didn't matter. Not anymore. At night, I kept a journal. Wrote down every memory, every wound, every betrayal. Not to hold on, but to release. When I gave birth weeks later, alone but not afraid, I held my son in my arms and whispered, You will never grow up thinking pain is love. I named him Leo. It meant lion. Because he survived. And so did I. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need apologies. I just needed this. Peace. A chance to become someone new. Someone free. And for the first time in years, I wasn't somebody's wife. Wasn't somebody's shame. I was just me. And that was more than enough. Months passed. Then one morning, while nursing Leo on the balcony, I got an email from an unknown address. The subject line read, You should see this. Attached was a link to a news article. Holloway and Company. CEO steps down amid scandal. I clicked. Someone had leaked the break room video. The one with Chloe bragging about the pill. Laughing. Mocking. The press picked it up like wildfire. Investors pulled out. The company collapsed in 6 weeks. But it didn't stop there. A second clip surfaced. This one wasn't just Chloe. It showed Eleanor, my mother-in-law, sitting beside her, sipping champagne, smiling. She raised her glass as the room laughed at my video. As if to toast my humiliation. Comments exploded. This entire family is rotten. The mother-in-law clapped while her grandchild was dying. She resigned from the board days later. Stepped down in disgrace. No statements. Just silence. I didn't cheer. I didn't celebrate. I just held Leo a little closer. His chest rising and falling like waves. Then came a letter. From Greg. Inside. All his remaining assets. The house. The shares. Everything. And a line handwritten, shaky. I know I don't deserve peace. But I hope you found yours. I folded it. Tucked it away beside Leo's hospital bracelet. I didn't write back. Some people learn through consequences. Others never do. But I had no interest in teaching anymore. I was too busy living. And that was enough.